Hello from Washington, D.C., our national capital. I'm Chuck Kyle, a retired Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Army. I spent 30 years in the military working as a strategic planner, strategic communications, and an intel officer. I did everything from Iraq, Afghanistan, starting all the way back with Desert Shield and Desert Storm. And over my 30 years, I've amassed a bunch of experience. I'm also the co-author of the Iraqi insurgency movement, written by myself, Christopher Alexander, and William McAllister. We wrote this back in 2003, talking about how the insurgency that was in Iraq was affecting the government. But today, I'd like to really sit down and spend some time and talk to you about Afghanistan. So over the last 96 hours, I've been watching Facebook. I've been pinged on Facebook, tagged on Facebook. And it's great to see that all the Facebook virologists have now become Middle Eastern specialists. And oh, by the way, for all those who don't know it, Afghanistan's actually in Asia. But we digress. So let's go back and talk about Afghanistan. The number one question that I have seen is, should we actually be leaving Afghanistan? And I was even pinged on Facebook, and it said that, ask any Afghan veteran, they'll tell you. Okay, so here I am. I'm going to tell you, yes, full stop. We should be leaving Afghanistan. Over the last 20 years, we've put our brightest military personnel, our brightest political people, we've spent $1 trillion, we've lost almost 3,000 US lives, and we haven't gotten anywhere yet. So another day, another month, another year, another 10 years, another decade, another 20 years, would it get us anywhere? I don't know, and I don't think so. So back in 2020, I've been very, very clear about my feelings about the Trump administration and the Biden administration. President Trump got it right when he said that we needed to leave this endless war, and we do. What he got wrong was going into a peace agreement with the Taliban and basically giving them the ability to know the date and time group in which we were going to leave. You know, I've heard people talk about on Facebook, they're like, oh, nobody knew what was going on. Why did this happen so quickly? This didn't happen quickly. President Trump stated that we would be out by 1 May in 2021. President Biden said that we would be out by 11 September of 2021, and then that date moved to August 31st, and here we are about the 20th of August. So this whole concept that nobody knew we were leaving and this was hasty and so forth is complete BS. We've been talking about this since President Trump ran for office, so it's nothing new. So I also was asked, do I feel bad being a Afghan veteran that the mission wasn't complete and that we're basically surrendering, that we are retreating? Well, the truth of the matter is that in post 9/11, the mission was to go in, and President Bush said it on the evening of the 11th. The mission was to seek out, find, and I don't kind of call it seek revenge, and kill those who caused 9/11. And we went to Afghanistan to do such a mission. And we were successful. I mean, if you actually go back and look, we killed bin Laden back in 2011. So the whole idea of going and getting rid of those who perpetrated 9/11, that occurred. But then shortly thereafter, we ended up finding ourselves in Iraq. Well, after the fall of the Saddam Hussein regime, our lieutenants, our majors, our lieutenant colonels, they all became mayors and so forth of small areas in Iraq. We found out very, very quickly that we sucked at doing that. We're great at blowing stuff up. We're great at killing people. We're great at conquering. We're not great at nation building. The mission creep that occurred in Afghanistan was just that we went from hunting and killing Al-Qaeda, Taliban, to nation building. And when we took on the business of nation building, we took on a possible failed mission. I can remember in 2009, myself and a couple others sitting around a table talking about how this was a mission that we were going to fail. It was mission creep. And every time we get this, we're not going to do it well. And we didn't do it well. And here we are in 2021. You want to call it a retrograde operation, you want to call it a retreat, you want to call it a surrender, whatever you want to call it. I even saw somebody call it the Biden Saigon moment. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The bottom line is that the mission we took on initially, we were successful. This mission is a failure, and we need to leave. Another kind of interesting one that I've seen is Biden has abandoned $1 billion worth of equipment. So back in 97, I was a maintenance officer. And the reason why I say that is if you knew what it takes to keep a military vehicle, what we call full mission capable, FMC, you would realize very quickly that the MRAPs and Humvees and so forth that Biden left behind, those are not going to work after about 30 to 60 to 90 days. Unless, with the MRAP, unless they have a bunch of engines, transmissions, axles, and tires laying around, those things are going to die very, very quickly. When it comes to the airframes, there's this concern that, we left all these helicopters and so forth. Well, actually, thanks to Planet Labs, you can see the unclassified imagery where the entire Afghanistan Air Force left Afghanistan and they're currently sitting in Uzbekistan. And here's a picture of that. So the airframes are already there. Now, are there some hangar queens? Those are aircraft that were not functional. They're sitting in Bagram or something. Absolutely. But, when we think about a person who goes into the military to become a pilot, in the Army, we call it high school to flight school in 52 weeks. So please don't think the images we see on CNN, any of those guys are going to get into a helicopter and all of a sudden know how to fly it, or even learn how to fly it. So that airframe, if they do get it working, it's going to make one flight, and then that airframe is not going to be worth anything anyway. So the whole idea that there's a bunch of equipment that's left, M16s, M4s, M9s, that's the Beretta. They don't even want those. They prefer the Russian-made stuff, the AK-47s. Ammunition for that is much more plentiful. So I'm not too concerned about the equipment that's being left. That's a red herring argument. Two other items. Let's talk about U.S. citizens that are being stranded in Afghanistan, and let's talk about our Afghan partners, those who worked with us. And I had several worked with me, translators, interpreters, and just general type stuff. First, on the U.S. citizens, I'll go back to my earlier comment about, President Trump made it clear running for office that he was going to get us out of Afghanistan. Then in 2020, he started doing peace talks with the Taliban, and he set a date in which we were going to leave. Two types of U.S. citizens that are in Afghanistan, and best I can tell, it seems to be about 15,000 of them. One set is those who are just like you and I. I mean, they're U.S. citizens, born here in the United States and so forth, have all the documentation, and it's just a matter of them going from wherever they're at in Afghanistan to the embassy, to the airport in Kabul, and leaving. Then you have what's called undocumented U.S. citizens. I know, undocumented U.S. citizens. I did a NEO, a non-combatant evacuation operation. I did it about a decade ago, and I was one of the planners for it. And somebody asked me about these undocumented U.S. citizens. I'm like, wait a minute, this country we're working with, it's not like on our border. It's not like we have people walking across. No, it's when an expat goes over, maybe an aid worker, maybe a contractor, maybe it's somebody who meets an Afghan in someplace in Europe, and they get married and they move there and they have a family. Well, for the most part, more than likely that family is not documented. They don't have U.S. birth certificates, they don't have that, but they are U.S. citizens. So our Department of State, and interesting enough, we have agreements in which the Department of State for France and for the UK can actually help work some of our visas. These individuals have to get paperwork to come to the United States. So there's about 15,000 of those. Do I have sympathy and empathy for them? I do, but at the same time, there is some personal responsibility. They've known for 16 months, for 2 years, that we're going to leave. If all of a sudden, last week, they decided to try to get to the United States, that's a little difficult for me. But let's talk about the Afghan interpreters and translators and so forth. There's a good chance that that's about 50,000 people. That's a lot. And what do we do? Well, So I think it was back in 2009-ish, I might be wrong on that date, but around that time period we set up this program. It's called the Special Immigration Visa Program. And it was for Afghan and for Iraqi translators, interpreters, those who'd worked with the United States. And the program was going along, and then when President Trump took office, he started slow rolling the program. Stephen Miller, and I'll do a video later on this week about Stephen Miller and his beliefs. Stephen Miller went into President Trump, and this is well documented, and told him that, hey, we don't want these brown immigrants coming to the United States. They're just terrorists in wait. And they started slow rolling the SIV program, to the point that the White House contacted Tillerson and told him to slow roll the program, and for State Department not to do it. Department of Homeland Security slowed the investigations. It's very, very easy to find. General James Mattis, when he was Secretary of Defense, actually sent a letter over to the White House saying, Mr. President, you need to stop this. We have partners that need to come to the United States. And President Trump didn't. We have an immigration problem, and I'll do a video later on in the week about immigration. I have a guest that wants to come on. We're going to talk about immigration. We do have an immigration problem. However, we got 74 million people who voted for President Trump. Can you imagine if one of the 50,000 Afghans that came to the United States did something illegal? Maybe they shot somebody. Maybe they were a terrorist in wait, and we just didn't have the ability to vet it properly. It would be the end of the Biden administration, full stop, period. Bam. I mean, it would just be done. President Trump rolled the dice. President Trump decided that it was best for him, when running for re-election, to have not brought Afghans to the United States. President Biden took office. He did not start the program back up. He rolled the same dice with the same answer. It's sad, but that's the political reality. That's why we have 50,000 Afghans who are at the airport in Kabul, who are trying to get away from the Taliban, and no success. I'll post a video of Steve Miller talking on Fox News just a couple days ago. One of the comments, and this is the senior advisor to the president about this type of thing, and he made to President Trump, and he made a comment the other day that Afghans and Iraqis had no rights, that there was no right for them, there was no expectation, there was no promise, there was no right for them to come to the United States. And I think Trump and in some ways Biden, bought into that, and that's the sad reality. I have a couple friends of mine, and maybe I can get one of them to talk, who has been successful of working through some programs to get his translator, his interpreter to the United States. Thank goodness. But we'll see how that goes. So let's roll this all back into one thing. I started this video show a year ago because of trying to predict who was going to win the 2020 election. And one of the things I used was the Lichtman keys. And one of the Lichtman keys is a military success or military failure. So the question becomes, is this going to be a military success or a military failure for President Biden? Everybody's seen it. Oh, this is Biden's Saigon moment. Well, from a Biden's perspective, I bet he's kind of hoping it is. And the reason why is this. In 1975, when we airlifted U.S. citizens off the embassy in Saigon, people went crazy about it. Photos from Afghanistan showed almost an identical thing, and here we are. Oh, this is the Biden-Saigon moment. About 30 days after Saigon 75, President Ford's ratings actually started to climb. By 90 days, Ford was then said about Ford that he's the one who got us out of Vietnam, and his polls went through the roof. So my prediction is this. For the next week or two, the media is going to gaslight us all and talk about how the horrific things that we've done. We didn't bring back our Afghan counterparts. We've stranded U.S. citizens. We've got billions of dollars worth of equipment. This was hasty. We've lost We've lost the war in Afghanistan. Now that part of Asia is going to crumble into turmoil and civil war, blah, blah, blah. That's what we're going to hear. Then about 30 days from now, President Biden's poll numbers are going to start to climb. And people are going to, the average American is going to sit there and go, oh, we don't have anybody in Afghanistan anymore. That's a good thing. And by 90 days, President Biden's going to be able to stand in front of the American people and say, I'm the one who pulled us out of Afghanistan. Within 120 days, there's going to be a memorandum from the desk of the 45th where President Trump's going to tout that he's the one that got us out of Afghanistan. So this is not going to be a negative on the Biden administration. This is going to go down as a military success for Biden, because after 20 years, after 3 presidencies, President Biden has gotten us out of Afghanistan. And truthfully, no one's died in the last 7 to 10 days, or at least Americans. So he's going to be able to withdraw us from country with minimal to no U.S. casualties. It's going to be a success. So if you have any questions, throw them down in the comment block. I owe you a couple videos this week. I'm going to talk one about immigration. A second, I want to talk about the special immigration visa program. And third, I want to talk about Steve Miller. Wow, what a way to shape the administration, the Trump administration. Thank you very much for watching.